Hi, folks. Welcome to Tuesday's podcast and videocast. I keep forgetting. Got Stuart Lockhead with me today. We don't think Jimmy's going to join us today. Haven't heard from him. The First Minister is making a statement in Holyrood Parliament today, so that's 2 o'clock. And we like to get this done and dusted before then. So that'll be on the agenda for tomorrow, I would think. Big news today. Well, Stuart, you tell me there's another independence poll out. I missed this. I haven't
Yes,
seen anything about it.
it looked a little confusing because it's another Survation poll, and it's barely a week or 10 days since we last had a Survation poll about Scottish independence and Scottish intentions. What it really said, it's sponsored by the Greens, or a Green supporter, a fellow called Mackenzie. I'm not sure, I forgot his first name. And the key finding is that the majority of Scots, when asked, Scots support a second independence referendum if Holyrood has a pro-independence majority. So it's not just having an SNP majority. The bar is being lowered by this question. That makes sense?
Well, yeah, but I wouldn't have used the term lowered because if any parliament has a majority in favour of a particular policy, that tends to win the day. Scotland, of course, Holyrood rather, isn't any parliament. It's the rules of Holyrood are dictated and malleable for the unionists.
Yeah.
One time, the SNP sending a majority of MPs to Westminster was reason enough to hold a referendum. As each barrier has been overcome, lo and behold, we find there's another barrier on the other side, hastily erected by the unionists to thwart any chance of independence.
Well, anyway, this particular poll, it came so quickly after the last Survation poll. I had to go and wind back to the original Survation website and check that it was a new poll. And it is, as I say, the last one. Who paid for the last one? I'm trying to remember now.
It's one of the papers, wasn't it? Was it the Times?
Could have been. Anyway, this one was, as I say, it was a pro-Green one, and that's why they presumably highlighted the fact that Greens and SNP together would constitute a mandate for another referendum. Now, there are 2 or 3 other things worth referencing here. Scots support holding a second referendum if pro-independence MSPs win a majority at Holyrood by a margin of almost 2 to 1. So if there is a majority, even if it's takes the Greens to, like the current one.
Almost 2 to 1. What's that? Below 60%.
Well, 2 to 1 would be 66 up to 33, wouldn't it?
I don't like things like almost. Do we have an actual figure?
I know, that's true. I haven't got all the detail. I found it about midnight last night, and I've been rather busy at the hospital today, so I haven't got all the details. Another interesting figure was in the period since the last Survation poll, which is only 10 days, 2 weeks at the most, the question on independence has gone up to 58%. So I'm sure wasn't Survation at 56 on that question?
54, I think.
Oh, well, there must be a slightly different question. Anyway, the top line question, the top line one, depending on the question, which I don't have at my fingertips, they're supporting the 58% for independence at the moment, which is James Mackenzie, the campaign consultant, paid for it.
Right. Okay. Well, that brings us rather neatly to a big beast statement. This time it isn't Tyrannosaurus Brune. This time it's John Major, who has suggested that an independence referendum is basically unavoidable. Therefore, we need to stymie it in some way. So his particular barrier is it will be 2 referendums. One, should Scotland be an independent country? And then a negotiation with the British government and a referendum on the agreement with the British government. Now, it's ridiculous because if you lose a referendum and you're in the powerful position that the British government will be, the deal you offer Scotland to be independent is going to be the worst deal possible.
I like the way you put that, Norry. Nice and clear.
It's that simple. I mean, that's what anybody would do who had lost. It's why there was no second referendum on Brexit. Can you imagine if we had a second referendum now on the deal that we've got for Brexit?
We haven't got a deal yet.
And that is what the British government will have learned. And Mr. Grey Underpants has already learned that what you do is you make it the most difficult negotiation on God's green earth. And who's going to want to repeat Brexit? Nobody.
Well, it's interesting that there are one or two, what's the word, semantic points I want to make. Andrew Learmonth, a young fellow that's very busy at the National, a journalist. Apparently, John Major said, the request for a Section 30 order blocking that, says John Major, will help the separatist case, same thing, isn't it, really? Separatists, if you're a unionist and they use the term separatists, that usually puts you right on the extreme end of the case. And then he wrongly added, in law, the Scots require the approval of the Westminster government before they can legally hold a new independence referendum. Now, that's not necessarily the truth. That's still contentious. Yeah,
but I mean, John Major, who comes across as a very reasonable, likable cricket fan, he's done what the law do. He's made assumptions. We have yet to prove in a court of law that the Scottish government can't call a referendum on independence. And if you want to talk about natural justice, you know, who would be independent in the whole world if they needed the permission of the people from whom they want independence?
But look, at this point, I have to bring up the expression Stockholm Syndrome, which apparently is... It's rife in Scotland amongst the unionists. Even amongst some people who want independence. They seem to think you've got to ask permission from mother before you can go out.
Well, I think we should stop calling unionists and start calling them jailers.
For lock tuggers.
Well, no, we just
3 bags full, sir.
We just call them jailers. We're locked into a union. We don't have access to the keys. They decide whether they give us the keys to the cell. You know, I mean, and this idea of a second referendum is so ridiculous. I mean, it's a good ploy on the unionist part, but no Scottish government could agree to it. I mean, it ties their hands, you know. Why would you agree to a negotiating position that basically guarantees the deal offered is going to be terrible?
Yeah. And also, it's a question of, we discussed this briefly yesterday, or I did with Peter Ray Bell, the interview, and what you're talking about, really, what's in the front of people's minds, thinking about voting yes or no to the independence of Scotland, is risk. Which is the riskier option for me and my family?
And how do you magnify the risk?
Well, look,
you offer a deal that is so bad.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, you can be in fantasy land with the deal. Because if the deal's refused and Scotland seizes its independence anyway, without a second referendum, you're back at the negotiating table. You know, it's mad. It's completely crazy.
Our problem at the moment is that the SNP government seems to be wedded to asking the jailer for the key.
Well, my view on this is, well, you know what it is. I mean, a Section 30 is the best way to go if we can get it. But we have to be prepared not to rely on it. Because, again, it's asking the jailer for the key. And all he has to do is say no. You know, there is no obligation on him to give you the key. You need leverage. And the leverage is a plan B, which for some reason, I mean, I'm hoping the SNP's position on this is, we've got a majority, you're not going to give us another referendum, therefore we're holding a referendum without your permission. International community, we have had mandates coming out our arse for the last 6 years. The British government is being unreasonable. We've tried to do it the democratic way. They won't let us do it in a reasonable way. We now have to be unreasonable.
And can I just throw in a piece of actual history of a kind which rarely gets mentioned? Think about sport, and certainly on a European scale, and football, rugby, in particular the two big sports. Scotland has had an identity for 100 years. So it's not like your average, it's not like Corsica or Catalonia or Wallonia. These don't have a clear identity. I mean, have you ever heard of Scotland playing the Wallonian football team or the Catalonian football team? So there is an identity that Scotland has internationally.
Yes. Yeah. And, you know, the whole thing is, it's perverse. I mean, we are now about to have a law that entitles us to break, as a country, international treaties. Okay? The law of unforeseen consequences. If it is legal for the British government to break international treaties, why isn't it legal for the Scottish government to break what started life as an international treaty, the Treaty of Union?
Well, the problem is we're not actually we're not at this stage here, you and me, or the movement, dealing with London at the moment. We're dealing with an SNP that doesn't really
Are you missing?
Appear to an SNP government, because that's one thing that Peter makes very clear. It's having a government in Scotland able to negotiate. It's no good just having a party or a movement.
Wait a minute, Stuart. You're missing my point here. There is a path. Well, a path. There is, in my view, a completely legitimate argument that if the British government is not prepared to adhere to international treaties, the Treaty of Union is dissolved.
Well, so what did we discover with Peter's interview the other day? That when asked, the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, poo-pooed the idea of dissolve the Union, dismissed it out of hand.
Well, I didn't see that. So I don't like words taken out of context. I would rather see the context of when it was said.
Well, it was in yesterday's show.
No, I know what Peter said.
What Peter said.
I didn't hear what the First Minister said, so I don't know the context. But we're now in the position of having an international treaty, the Treaty of Union, that the British government may well, if it passes the Internal Market Bill, may well consider it has a right to completely break and ignore. Now, what does that mean?
It would appear that my sources, who have whispered secondhand in my ear over the weekend about the progress of this bill, I was told it would come back from the House of Lords with a majority against it, and it has. And at that point, the government, the Johnson government, would climb down on the international treaty threat. But that would, we've heard nothing on that progress, no progress on that at all yet, have we?
Well, what we've heard is government ministers, I think there's now 2 of them, making statements that they will not remove those clauses from the bill. Having said that, that means absolutely nothing with this Tory government.
Well, exactly.
You know, until the fat lady sings, you've no idea what the song's going to be. So who knows? I would imagine if they do that, when it goes back to the Lords the second time, they'll chuck it out again. But remember, it's not scheduled for debate in Parliament till the end of November. So there's a bit of time to go.
What about the other factor that, when talking about Brexit, I haven't had time to check it up, but it was suggested there are only 7 to 10 days to complete a deal of any kind, you know. But
I still think they're going to have a deal. It's not going to be a deal in the sense of Canada or anything of that magnitude, but I think they'll have a bare bones deal. I think it'll cost us fishing. Us. Did you hear me say that? I didn't mean to say that. I think it'll cost us fishing. I don't see why they would consider it worth dying on unless they really do want a no deal. But I think politically, it would be of more use to them to get some sort of deal.
you know, I was thinking about this fishing issue. Now, fishing is a tiny part of the UK economy, and it's a tiny part of the EU economy. And why is it so contentious? And I'm fishing, fishing, and then I remember just how, shall we say, how riotous the French trawlermen can be, blocking Calais. And
Exactly. They can stop the ferries.
And don't forget, the French farmers are very good at blocking using their tractors. When did anything like that happen in Scotland?
Yeah. And would the English fishermen be prepared to do the same thing if they don't get to keep all their fish?
I don't think so.
Well, I think there will be a deal that there'll be a diminution of their rights to fish, but it won't be nearly as drastic as it'll be billed by Johnson, etc. But these guys in the British government will do what they need to do to get what they want, and they'll just spin it. And our newspapers will go along with a spin.
That is unfortunately the situation, and people then get angry when they find out later on that they've been sold a pup.
Yeah, and you know, and that'll be a couple of years down the line, due to the confusion. By which time, the government will have moved on to other.
They'll have blamed their
follies.
They'll have blamed it all on COVID, of course.
Well, the kind of interesting twist to it all is they'll blame it on COVID, but they'll also blame it on businesses not being prepared. I mean, every time that advert that they're running at the moment pops up on TV about being prepared, there is no deal. There is no deal, and there's maybe a deal, and maybe there'll be a great deal. And we don't know the rules for any of the three.
How can you prepare for something that has no deal?
But the government will point back and say, look at that wonderful campaign we ran, where we gave you all ample warning.
Well, I know someone who's very deeply involved in the business in the south of England who still doesn't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. So
all they've done is plan ahead for 2 months of stock being on the right side of the channel.
Well, and as you say, COVID will be ample camouflage for the biggest self-harm a government's done in many years.
And so we've got we won't even see much of the trouble. There might be stacks of lorries in car parks in January, but I have a funny feeling it won't be till the end of February before they really stack up.
Well, I foresee laws about when you can enter Kent
£300 is the fine.
to get on a ferry, because the optics of 2,000 lorries in a traffic jam on the way to Dover are not what the government wants.
£300 is the fine, so apparently.
So what was the other thing we were going to chat
Well,
about?
this is a new topic, which is liable to blow up.
Oh, yeah.
This is the story, right? Whose name's on it? Severin Carrell, Scottish Guardian correspondent. He and another couple of Guardian writers. The UK is set to cut COVID self-isolation to 10 days after a huge row between Dominic Cummings and Chris Whitty. On top of that, a contract has been signed for £500 million for the use of rapid tests, for which and the company who got the contract is based in a house in Wellingborough.
This is the test that specifically says, in its jargon, that these tests are for people showing symptoms. Apparently, these tests are no good for asymptomatic people.
There we go. And this is the quote.
And they want to use it for asymptomatic people.
Lateral flow tests can give results within half an hour, but detailed data on accuracy for the test from the Porton-Down Evaluation Centre has not been disclosed. There's another story. Rewind all the way down back to the Novichok, Porton-Down.
Was it not the case that Cummings wanted a 7-day isolation period?
Yes. It was worse than that. Chris Whitty only discovered what was being planned. He wasn't engaged in the plan to do this. Under the new proposals, people are expected to be allowed to stop isolating on the 10th day after coming into contact with an infected person, following a negative test. In the hope, this is after 10 days, in the hope that this will improve compliance. But if they test positive on that date, they'll be asked to continue self-isolating for a further 8 days. So that's that's 18 days instead of 14. So
I mean, I'm amazed that Chris Whitty hasn't resigned. You know, I mean, he's been put up time and again
the fall guy.
As the fall guy. And, you know, it must be horrendously difficult not be able to just stand up and give your opinion, you know, to actually state your case in front of the cameras while standing beside you. Bojo happily rambles on about the greatest this and the most fantastic.
Did you see him yesterday? What
I didn't. I couldn't face it, to be honest with you.
He was useless. Burbling on about, I mean, 90% of the words he spoke were pointless. And they were all jumbled up.
I caught one analogy. What was it now? Was it about getting on and off boats or something?
No idea.
And I mean, analogies are supposed to make things simple to understand. It totally muddied the waters of what he was trying to say.
Well, the reason it's muddied the waters, let me tell you what the leak says, right? Chris Whitty discovered, because it's worse than this 10 days thing, but 10 days has just been cooked up as a compromise. Chris Whitty discovered on Tuesday last week that a press release had been drafted to use the rapid tests to have self-isolation to 7 days, with the eventual goal of scrapping the self-isolation period entirely by offering tests to people as soon as they are notified of a contact with an infected person. You're an expert on tests. Whitty is said to have been implacably opposed on public health grounds, arguing that the incubation period for the virus was too long to allow immediate testing, and the rapid tests would fail to detect every infected person. So the final thing was the proposal to test after 8 days with permission to leave the house on the 10th day was cooked up as a compromise.
And that's the problem.
Not science.
What exactly? I don't think these people see this as a health issue. Westminster seem to view this as a political issue. And, you know, the facts should not get in the way of their schemes. It's actually breathtaking. I mean, when you consider that he did the right thing going into lockdown in England, to even be thinking along these lines when he's taken the hard hit of the lockdown, why would he suddenly start playing games again? He's actually in quite Boris Johnson.
Oh, Boris, right.
He's actually in quite a strong position now. He's done the worst thing possible for his libertarian wing of his party, and he's got away with it. He's done it. Boom. You've got a month of lockdown. Let's see where that takes us. And then they start talking about doing things that fly in the face of evidence.
Now, the company that's got the contract is called Innova, and it's backed by American money. And it's got a leaflet out. On the leaflet, the product has not been designed for mass testing. Its leaflet is open and saying it is for people who have symptoms rather than those who are asymptomatic.
Yeah, exactly.
And the devices, which look like a pregnancy test, are intended to be read by a healthcare professional.
It's just, it's crazy. And I'm beginning to wonder if they just go, this is crazy, let's attribute it to Dominic Cummings. I find it quite difficult to believe that a man with his education is that stupid. I really do.
I suspect he's got ADHD or what, autistic or something. He won't have full skills, full human contact skills. He'll be good, very good at. Who's that guy in the Big Bang Theory?
Well, I mean, I just find it breathtakingly stupid. We've got quite a lot of evidence now. We don't have a test for asymptomatic people that we can rely on, but we're going to test asymptomatic people with a test for symptomatic people. Absolutely crazy. It's about spin. It's about having enough options to spin them into looking like a credible alternative to the sensible option.
Of course, we're not privy to this complete world of people that turn up to demonstrate against wearing masks, and anti-vaxxers, and follow David Icke, and they live in this bubble of you know, and Trump is responsible for an awful lot of it.
Wow.
And Steve Bannon, what did Steve Bannon? Oh God, he's the sort of, not the Machiavelli. Who was the Russian man behind the, what do they call him?
Molotov.
No, the witchfinder guy. The guy there's, oh, no, my brain's not there. Somebody will tell us. One of our fans will tell us. Talking about Russia, there's a story here. Trump's fury feeds Moscow and Beijing accounts of US chaos.
Well, I mean, that's not even a surprise.
They like to portray, but if you watched RT, they like to portray the bad side of America.
Well, they do, because there are elements of the free world that aren't exactly wonderful.
Free, yeah.
Because it's not free.
And both Russia and China, you see, President Trump's baseless claims of a stolen election resonate on Russian state media. Both Russia and China have painted American democracy as volatile and vulnerable. And he doesn't do himself any favors at all. Does Trump, does he?
No, he doesn't do America any favors. I think he's such a narcissistic, self-absorbed individual that it's just about him. You know, I would not be in the least bit surprised if it comes out in the wash. He's sitting in the White House putting together contracts for his TV company or his TV show, or how much money he can get out before he leaves of the government. You know, I mean, that's what the man is. It's what he's always been. And it won't matter what he does and how badly he does it, how difficult he makes it for Biden in the handover, his support will find justification for it. It's crazy.
And where do they go? What kind of, where is the future for them? Because it's what's the word? They're into disruption, same as Cummings, aren't they? They're disruptors. Now,
I don't agree with that. I don't think it's as sophisticated as that. I think they're self-absorbed, narcissistic, wankers,
Trump is.
and it's about lining their own
But
pockets.
you're not clear. You're not making the difference between the people behind Trump that are manipulating him and using him.
I think they're the same sort.
Well, I don't. I
think
think
they're the
they've been on this course ever since the original New Deal in the 1930s. And then you had McCarthyism in the 1950s. The right wing have been on this course for a very long time, in America.
Well, there's always been that element. I mean, it's the dark side of the American dream. You know, I mean, it's one thing to arrive in America with a pound in your pocket and end up living a nice upper middle class life with 2 cars and a house.
What was that movie? Randolph, it was supposed to be Randolph Hearst, the newspaper magnate.
Rosebud.
I'm seeing my brain's not working too well today, but anyway, the Russians and the Chinese are playing, they're having fun and games about what Trump's up to. It's not a case of, they're just, that we told you what it was like. They're able to say to their population, especially in China are trying to persuade the rest of the world and their population that they are about to take over as the leader of the world again. And this rose straight into that narrative.
Yeah, it's shocking, isn't it? Because we don't do that to them.
I don't know. But anyway, we've got something to look forward to maybe this afternoon. I say, as journalists, as reporters, we might get some interesting, but maybe not. It's when's she supposed to start speaking?
I think it's 2:15.
Yeah, thereabouts. So
it's on the beep.
What time are we now? 10:02.
Yep. I need a coffee anyway. So anything strike you funny wise or?
No. Well, look, I don't know if you noticed, I've finally got control of my camera, and I've no longer got a bright red face. It is quite red.
James O'Brien of LBC tweeted today, "I'd love to see between a crematorium and a dildo shop become a figure of speech. For example, after obediently attacking the idea of feeding hungry children, Tory MPs were left between a crematorium and a dildo shop when Johnson did yet another U-turn." I really do. I think I'm going to have to start using that. Every time a Scottish Tory MP comes out with support for a government policy, I'm just going to bring that up, because within days, there will be a U-turn, making them look like the idiots they are.
I should have lined up that clip, the Australian clip that I shared with you. Very quickly, someone's chopped together. It's about a 3-minute song about the demise of Trump.
Yes.
We could show it tomorrow.
We'll see. Yeah, I think I've actually got it somewhere. Okay, we'll call it a day at that, and keep some energy for the First Minister's report on it's really about the levels and if anybody's going to move or not. It could be quite short, because I don't think there'll be much movement.
I wonder if she'll respond to the suggestion that Cummings and Whitty want to change the rules, shall we say?
Well, that'll be interesting.
She's in Parliament. She's allowed to.
Well, what I mean is it'll be interesting if the question even gets asked. It won't be asked by the Tories.
Oh, she might have a planted question about that.
The
What's an
SNP or
SNP backbencher?
Or the Greens might ask it.
Mm-hmm.
But it'll be interesting. It'll be especially interesting if she says there's no way they're going down that route, to see what the Tories have got to say about it.
Which side of the Tory party? Will it be the Dougie Ross or the what? Who runs the other side?
Well, it won't be
of the Tory
Dougie
party?
Ross because he's not allowed in the chamber.
No, it'd be Ruthie. I wonder what side Ruthie will come down on them.
Basically anything that the Scottish population disagree with coming out of Westminster, the Tories will agree with the Scottish population, even if that involves beheading Boris on the top of Calton Hill. That's the way they're going to play it.
There you go. I mean, apparently Steve Bannon, the guru behind Trump and Johnson, apparently he suggested that two of Trump's team should be beheaded. Not just sacked, but be beheaded. I think that Twitter was taken down. Now, isn't that interesting? Twitter keep taking down tweets by Donald Trump, the most powerful man in the world. I wonder why.
They put warnings on a lot of them because they're not true. Okay. We'll call it a day at that. Thanks for listening, folks, and we'll catch up with you tomorrow. PMQs tomorrow. There's a joy to look forward to.
Oh, yes.
So we'll catch you all tomorrow, folks.
Okay.
Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.